again, and welcome to Void Signal. I am your host, Brian Prime. This is the Valentine's Day special, and last year, my Valentine's Day guest was this same guest, my friend Tom Åsberg, better known to you as Ginger Khan. He started out in a small band called Mongolian Cosmonaut and made sort of necro-funkadelica kind of music, and eventually found his way wearing the mask as the first singer for Priest. But he has since left that and collaborated with Brides of the Black Room, and then moved on to Udod, and now has released his first solo singles as just Ginger Khan. Tom has been a friend of mine for a little over 3 years now and has been a driving force and the reason that Void Signal is still going. It was a treat for me to get to talk to him again. This was old friends catching up, and you get to listen. Anyway, I hope that you enjoy it, and as always, feel free to let me know if you do or do not. Lastly, before I let you go and turn you loose on the interview, I will remind you once again that Void Signal is ad-free and powered by a person, which is me. If you would be so kind as to consider visiting voidsignal.net or patreon.com/voidsignal. The Void Signal Patreon is a great way to help support me, independent media, the Void Signal Project, and making more ad-free Void Signal. Yeah, thank you so much for your consideration. I hope you are well. Please stay safe, stay loud, and take the utmost of care. Welcome to Void Signal. I am your host, Brian Prime. I am joined once again by my friend and part of the reason Void Signal still exists, Tom Åsberg, Ginger Khan. It is so good to talk to you again. How are things?
Likewise, Brian. Things are, I would say, interesting. I'm in the adult grind, but it's only filled with things I've chosen myself. So I can't really blame anyone but myself if I'm feeling stressed out about anything. Sure. How are you, good sir?
Things are good, turning things around, new chapters in my life going on, making the most of it. I mean, the world is falling apart and everything, but, making the most of it. Otherwise, things are going well. Things are looking up. We have optimism in our hearts, maybe, but, yeah, things are good overall. I want to just jump right into this because you have, since the last time we spoke, you have released music finally as Ginger Khan. Not finally, you know what I mean. But you've put out some Ginger Khan singles. No One Cared Who I Was at Need at All. Both have been fantastic. How has the reception been for you? I guess it seems like it's been positive. I mean, I would imagine you feel pretty good about it, but what has been kind of going on with you as these have rolled out?
It has been probably the single most overwhelmingly positive feedback I've ever gotten on anything I've ever done. And it might sound weird because, Ginger Khan is still at a point where spread wise, it's not that big. There's not a lot of people on this ship yet. It's a fairly small thing, at least as of now. Mm-hmm. But the reception has been insanely positive, and there's a difference between what I've done in the past and this in terms of that reception, and it's because for the first time ever, I can truly trust that all the feedback I'm getting is genuine, and it comes from a real place, and it's not based on a connection to something else or a need for people to parasocially get closer to something that's out of their reach, that they might want to, connect with other acts that have been adjacent to things I've done in the past. Like now I know that it's only about this piece of music and the relationship that I have with the people who are listening. And that to me means more than everything, almost, I would say. So that whatever feeling this has kindled within my audience, it's real, it's genuine, and it's something that I'm sharing with them. So it's been truly, truly amazing. And amazing is one of those words that people throw around so carelessly. But to me, yeah. I read in an interview somewhere that when Billie Eilish put out her first song, once it reached like 1,000 streams or something like that, she thought nothing can ever get better than it. And I get her. I truly get it, because you know that those people are listening because of you and because of it, not because of something else.
Makes sense. And I can appreciate that as, just a thing that is your own, I guess. I'm glad that that has been your experience so far, and that it has, I've sort of seen the growth and all the positive feedback. The songs are great. I think No One Cared Who I Was is remarkably poignant and a fantastic debut single from you. Excited to see what you do next. And it is a good look on you, like this sort of fit. Like I like Udad and most of the things that you've been involved in, but this does feel very authentic, very from the heart, very this is what you have been sort of brewing in this time, I guess might say.
Well, I mean, let me assure you then on that, Brian, that this is only the beginning. And all pretentious artists say that, but
sure.
I mean, I'm just getting started.
But you're my favorite pretentious artist.
Well, isn't it nice to have favorites? We have a concept here in Sweden that I hear is, I wouldn't say taking the United States, maybe taking a few cities on the East Coast lukewarmly by storm. But we have a candy concept here in Sweden, which basically based on the idea that they give you a bag. Yeah, they give you like a little baggie and a little spoon, and then you have like 100 types of candy that you can choose from. And then you just pick these little pieces, like everything from, the most sour shit to like the salted licorice that we love here in Sweden, chocolates, whatever. And then you just weigh in the bag and you pay like the price per ounce or pound or whatever you're buying. Mm-hmm. And we call it lösgodis, like loose candy here in Sweden. And it's one of those candy concepts that to us, it's like most common basic thing, but apparently it's not a thing outside the Nordic countries, I've heard. And it hit Sweden really big in like the late 70s. And the reason for that was that we had this other concept called Saturday candy. Like you only got candy during Saturdays, so you had to choose wisely what pieces would you like. So the idea of having favorites, something that we Swedes are really good at. Like you pick favorites, and those favorites says a lot about you and like your values in life. So for me to be your favorite pretentious artist, I mean, I would love to be your Saturday candy, Brian.
You are my Saturday candy. Oh, wow. Okay, let me ask you this follow-up question. What is your Saturday candy? Like, what is your favorite candy?
Good question. I'm going to give you two answers, a real one and a fake one, and you can figure out which one is which. I'm very much into Germanic culture is one big Saturday candy of mine. Like I love Germanic and in that sense Scandinavian and Nordic culture. I have a huge appreciation for other cultures as well. The Americas, parts of Asia, everything. But there's just something about the closer it hits to home, and that's my language. And the other answer, I really like the sour stuff, the sour candy. There's a thing here. I'm not entirely sure what it's called, but it's in the color of. It's called, I think, it's salted tongue or sour tongue or something like that. And it's green and it's orange. And it tastes like the 80s. Can't really describe it. And it's my colors,
Okay, I like it. I'm into it. When you say so for the Nordic and Germanic sort of, I'm picturing a lot of like chocolate and nuts, kind of.
Now that was me. If I'm your favorite artist, and I'm your Saturday candy in that sense, then I gave you the culture answers. How about that? What do I pick when it comes to like music and art and whatever? And even though
I have both candy answers, so I was like, oh, German chocolate.
They are. They are to a certain extent. They are.
Sure. Okay.
And even though I'm a person that's sort of dabbled, mostly as a joke with like Northeast Asian culture with my like stage name, the fact that I'm very much into these Eurasian tribe vibes. Mm-hmm. That's more of a little wink, something that I find fascinating, interesting. But I am very much a product of Northern Europe, Central Europe, both history-wise and society-wise and music-wise. Most of my favorites are here. So when I need to relax, when I need to feel good, that's usually where I head. Not all of the times, but most of them.
Gotcha. Okay, makes sense. Let me pose this question to you because it is relevant and somewhat topical. There is a resurgence of people who will tell you that they are way into Nordic culture and way into blah, blah, blah. And they are using that as an outlet for their own sort of racist ideas. Is that a thing that you encounter often in your part of the world?
Yes and no, I would say. I mean, to tell you the truth, it was worse during the early 90s and the 90s when it comes to Sweden. I mean, at least if you're talking about that sort of lazy appropriation of it, it was easier to spot back then as well. I mean, these guys, no idea what they were doing. What made it even more confusing when you look back at a lot of stuff then is that there were a lot of people that got lumped in with those characters, people that still have the Nazi stamp on them, which is entirely undisturbed. These people that I'm thinking of held, as far as I can tell, no xenophobic or racist or even nationalistic opinions at all. But because of the times and because there were so many neo-Nazis at that time, they got lumped in with them. Today, of course, people are, I mean, they've cleaned up the Nazis, so they're harder to spot. But I wouldn't say it's more today. I would say that it's less, but more insidious. Among my friend group and amongst the people that I'm hanging out with, both in the metal scene and in the synth scene. Oh my God, the synth scene. This might be a little sort of semi-known or unknown fact to most Americans, but like the synth scene in Europe also back in the 90s, there were a few people with really hardcore right-wing opinions within it. But a lot of those people were just attracted to the synth scene because the look. The look is that look. It's that clean-cut look. And the same thing goes there. I mean, today there are very few. There are even fewer of them today than it was then. There wasn't even that many people to begin with those opinions. But they were loud and very prolific.
And I do feel like part of, just to touch on your point there, is that like, I do feel that there were bands in the scene and that it was sort of being reappropriated or being used satirically or to be reclaimed in some way. And I just sort of feel like we definitely can't do that now because kind of like in your example, like it has that lure. It has that draw of like the aesthetics are there for this thing that is already insidious. Like, so it just sort of is a natural lure to those sorts of characters.
I would say that, I mean, let's be clear about what we're talking about here. The thing that you can't really use ironically, I mean, you can use it if you're telling the story of the thing, but the things that you can use ironically are straight up Nazi symbols. I mean, you can't use that because it's not funny. And this is a bit of a I would say sensitive topic in a way, but when it comes to the things that we associate with the Nazis, and I'm talking about like Germanic culture, to a certain extent, this romanticized version of Scandinavian culture, Viking culture, being Norse culture, and everything. It's important to understand that this is like a European thing that has a tendency to translate very poorly once it leaves Europe. Because of the connotations, but also because all these things were appropriated by the Nazis. So I mean, when you use the terminology, when you use the vibe, people's minds immediately go there, and the moment leaves Europe, it loses something in the translation. And I think that's one of the greatest crimes that the Nazis ever committed, is that they appropriated and tarnished something that is equally as beautiful as all cultural expressions. And it's so hard to navigate today, especially, and I shouldn't be speaking for an outsider, but I would assume it's really hard to navigate as an outsider who hasn't grown up in it. And what I'm seeing, at least, especially during the last, 15 years, it's I would say that it's changing now, is that people have strayed from these symbols almost as like a precautionary thing. Like they don't want to risk being associated with racism. And I get that so much. I get that impulse, and I have it as well. But I think it is important that to reclaim these stories, these expressions for humanism, for humanity, basically, to reclaim them from the Nazis and from everyone who's ever dabbled with them, because these things are not their possessions, and they never were.
Okay, very well said.
Those guys they don't get to have it. They don't get to have it. It's ours, all of ours. It's yours as well. It's human history, human culture. And what even is culture? It's ideas. It's stories we tell each other to entertain ourselves. Like someone like pizza, someone else might like, I don't know, a burger. It's like...
Yeah, I take your meaning. I mean, culture is definitely just a thing that it's a way to learn about how other people have lived and how, and in the case of if you're researching your own history or genealogy or whatever, it's a way to know where you came from. And excuse me, I do think there's tremendous value in that. But like you said, as it can be difficult to navigate. But I do agree that people should try and reclaim things and, make it very clear that, the enemy here is the underlying is the fascist tendency to bigotry, to hatred, and that is the thing that needs to be stomped out. Okay, well, thank you for letting me sort of pick your brain on a little bit of a hot button topic that just sort of is remarkably fucking relevant nowadays, unfortunately, but is a thing worth mentioning, I think, especially with...
Right. May I also just come in there and say that I'm glad that you asked me these questions, because I know that there's been this picture painted in the media, both nationally and especially globally, for a lot of people, I mean, Americans especially, that Sweden has turned into this place where racism is rampant. And I mean, sure, that is the case. But there's a light in the darkness as well. These are ongoing conversations happening with people, and I want people out there to know that there's more of us than that. We're a multifaceted people with conflicting ideas, just like everyone. And it's not just that people that are into these symbols and ideas, all people that feel that they are the superior ones because of it. But unfortunately, but also necessarily, those guys are in the conversation. And that's how we end up winning, because we want to have the conversation. They don't. They want to end the conversation. And that's when humanity loses, when silence creeps in. And those guys are just on top.
Agreed. Very well said. Okay, we will shift gears here. And yes, thank you for, I'm glad that to ask these questions, because I mean, these are the things that I want to know. Thank you for the answer. We will shift gears to, because I want to talk about your next single, Swing at the King, which I have not listened to as of yet. So we're going to do, I will hear it for the first time with you here in a few minutes, and listeners will hear a special preview of it, and then I can pick your brain about it and tell you what I think could be improved. That's a joke. I wouldn't do that. But I'm ready to give that a listen through now, if you are.
You know what, Brian? I think that sounds like a wonderful... Yeah.
Okay, wonderful.
And I solved them one by one. Some tried to end my reign before it even had begun. Even had begun. And now the corners got them on the run, back to the hole where they came from. My 8 tentacles will pick apart any gun. In war I'd rather do than be the one who's getting done. One who's getting done. Whoa, 99 problems, one gin and a solve them. If you take a swing at the king, better make sure that you get him, 'cause the line is thin between nothing and everything.
song is over. Wonderful. Very reminds me of the 80s. Is very sort of very in the discotheque kind of a vibe to it. How fun. What prompted you to write this song, if you don't mind my asking, sort of the behind the curtain reason?
It started out as a this very old beat that the producer and mixer on this entire project had, a guy called Stefan Brisland Ferner. He is a wonderful soul, a real silver enigma, that one. And he had this track sort of like just the very basic version of the beat he had laying around. And there was something inherently Ginger Khan even to that beat, I thought, which is that it has these sort of anti-musical elements into it. Like it sort of hurts harmony-wise in certain places, which I like. I'm into like black metal and stuff like that. It has that element of this is not how it should be sounding, but I like mixing those disharmonical aspects into pop music and electronics music, and that prompted us to feel that, okay, this is obviously going to be a GK song. And there was an inherent aggressiveness to it. I almost immediately felt that this is a call to war. And it stirred up a lot of emotions and memories from my past regarding other things that I've done music-wise and, just in general in life. It made me think about the last few years and some of the low points in life, basically. And I felt that I needed to write about it pretty early on in this entire process. Sum up everything that had been and focus on moving to the next chapter, basically.
Gotcha. Okay. And that makes sense looking at the singles and take it as a whole, starting out with No One Cared Who I Was and then sort of moving to this. That progression does make a lot of sense. Okay. So this, the single is great, Dancy. This is not even out yet, and I don't mean to be that person that's like, okay, now what next? But what next?
Well, that's a hard question to answer because the entire and writing process has been very, very dynamic. It's very much based upon whether or not I can get all members in the same room. Not that we need to be in the same room to work, but basically. Where I'm at right now is that, we're working on an album that is way further developed than certain people might think. I would say that the sort of work for the entire album is done and has been for quite a while now. But it is in the mixing and sort of production part of making an album where the magic starts happening for real, I would say. And we are a busy gang, myself included. So it's hard for me to say exactly when the next single is going to be out, or even more so when the album is going to be out. Work ongoing, and I think it's going to be sort of nothing, and then almost everything at once.
Sure.
Suddenly,
Gotcha. Okay.
All I know is that the next song is going to come out this year. That's all I know right now. Okay. And I would say 98% certainty the album as well, unless something insane happens.
Okay. Fingers crossed in that case. More genre experimenting. Still mostly based in sort of an electro kind of a space, but branching out from there, I assume.
Absolutely. There's not. I was gonna say that there's not two songs on this album that sound alike, but there are two songs, actually, precisely two songs that I would consider sister tracks. Other than that, there are very few songs on this album that sound alike, which is what I wanted. I think that, and if you listen back to a lot of other artists' first album, but I think that a first album should sound a bit like a Frankenstein's monster, because you're piecing together these weird ideas that you had over the years leading up to that point, which is also why I really into the first albums from a lot of bands and artists. Because, okay, for instance, Brian, what is your favorite Michael Jackson album? Do you have one?
I don't have one.
Okay. Is it because you don't like Michael Jackson, or is it because you can't pick?
I don't really like Michael Jackson.
Is it because he was a pedophile, or is it? I can have more part of the question.
Yes. Man, we are just keeping it completely real on this episode. Yes, 100%. That is why. And I just, the music is just not my flavor, really. Like, I can appreciate it's how big it was. But yeah, I don't like Michael Jackson.
I could I realized I could have probably picked any other artist than him to make this point, because I think it's true for almost. I'm going to make the same comparison in a few moments with a couple of movies to get this point across. But still, my favorite Michael Jackson album, both regardless and in regards to him possibly being a pedophile. My favorite Michael Jackson album is the first one, Off the Wall. And the reason to why I feel that way is because the further into Michael Jackson's career that Michael got, he became sort of more reliant on the gimmicks that made him Michael Jackson. You know, the sounds that he made, the dance moves, the fact that he had like a one glove on, the clothes, the everything, like the character of Michael Jackson. When he released his first album, he didn't have that. I mean, he was Michael Jackson. He had some of it, of course, but he had to just make a good album. And he couldn't rely on the gimmicks. Therefore, it sounds more like a good funk, disco, pop album from this like up-and-coming artist that you can get into or not.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then the moment like the character gets defined, you start branching out, and then branching out becomes the character. Another example, which do you like the best, Alien or Aliens?
Oh, fuck. Man, this is a hard question. I love them both, but I don't know. I lean towards Alien just because, I lean towards Alien, but yeah. Go on, finish your point. I'm curious to hear what your point is with these films.
Me too, because Alien is just, I mean, it exists in a vacuum. You don't need a sequel to that movie. I'm happy that there's a great sequel to it, but the sequel is more of an action movie where the first one was more of a horror movie.
Yeah.
Another example, which do you like best, Terminator or Terminator 2?
I do like the first Terminator better.
Yeah, me too, because it exists in its own vacuum. You don't need a sequel to that movie. I love the fact that there's a good sequel, but the first one is better because of the horror elements and because they couldn't rely upon a pre-existing thing. They just had to come up with a good idea. Same thing with me. I like the first Max Payne game more than the other Max Payne games. I can go on like this forever. Like, I like the first because the first is usually the most honest in a way. Not necessarily, but almost always.
Sure. I would agree. And I take your meaning. Like, it's sort of the freshest iteration of the ideas versus, just sort of trying to redecorate what is there. I do think that when it comes to artists, that there are some who I do tend to like first albums. But I feel like there are so many artists that sort of will release like maybe their second or third album and sort of really start to hit a stride of like, oh, I have this all figured out now. And I'm, plying a path that is easier to traverse because, I have walked these roads already. So I think there's a lot of value in that. Not to argue with you, but like, I take your meaning though of like the first iteration of a thing is a little bit special. So I'm excited in that case to kind of hear what you end up making for yourself because, and a question that I did want to put to you, since we're just, I'll be talking about whatever. How much of a factor was your past and your history, being in Priest? How much of that accounted for Oh, how much of that weighed on your mind as you sat down to start writing these songs that are strictly yours? I mean, No One Cared Who I Was definitely sort of summarizes and addresses that very clearly and directly. But did it affect you? Was it in your mind as you were sitting down to write the other tracks?
Not. I wouldn't say that it was a big factor, really. I mean, it like everything in my history, it popped up once in a while. Like just as like there's an upcoming song on the album called "Stings a While," and that's based upon my relationship with like substance abuse and stuff like that. Not necessarily my substance abuse, or not necessarily not my substance abuse. And of course, that had to come up when I wrote that song. And it's like everything, it's in there, but it's not the main motivator behind any song. Not even No One Cared Who I Was. Like, obviously, it's in there. It's a big part of it, but it's not the defining factor. For the first time in my life, and that's the beauty of Ginger Khan to me, I sat down and I asked myself, who am I? Who am I? You want to know what my dream has always been?
I would like
my biggest dream. My biggest dream is to play in a really good band. I want so badly from my teenage years to be in a group of friends, brothers and or sisters that just, acted like a bunch of pirates, jumped in our van, and hit the roads together. I didn't dream of like becoming rich or famous or nothing like that. I think that it's a nuisance and a hindrance to what I wanted. I wanted to be part of a family that were really into this like super distinct subculture and that lived together, ate together, got fucked up together, and most importantly, played together. I did not want to be the leading guy. I wanted a band with like 4 or 5 leading guys, and then I just happened to be on the vocals, so I was in the front lines, but everybody fulfills the role. I didn't want to become a solo artist. I don't like solo artists particularly that much. I have a hard time connecting with them. It seems to be a very lonely position, and it is. So for me, like when I sat down to do this, it was like a test of, okay, you have never dreamt about this. You have no experience in being a solo artist. You have never tried to describe your thoughts, your feelings, and now you have to. And there are no excuses. So for me to sit down and start writing an album or start to map out like the path before me with the sort of intention or motivation having been in something else and have that as a guiding factor would have been so counterproductive. I didn't think about it all that much. All I thought about was, who am I? And more than thinking, I did a lot of feeling. And I'm really glad that I have found something that feels true and authentic to me. Not to mention the fact, and this is a secret, I'm going to put it there now, so it's not a secret anymore. Ginger Khan isn't a solo project. It is my favorite kind of solo project, which is that it's a band masked as a solo project. Then you have the other version of this, the other alternative, which is the worst thing that exists, the worst thing ever, which is a solo project masked as a band. Oh boy, let me tell you, those projects really suck, especially to play in, but also to listen to us, because you're getting scammed basically.
Gotcha. That is quite the hot take. You're getting scammed. Is it like, you mean because all the parts are being played by one person?
No, it's because there is a person that wants you to think that person isn't a narcissistic asshole who's only in this for itself. And I say itself because, I don't consider those people to be human. Even like the defining characteristic of humans is empathy. And but here's the thing, though: you don't have to necessarily be an asshole to run a solo project and mask it as a band. My question is, why would you do that? Then just have a solo project instead. Everyone would be like super stoked on the fact that you know how to do all of this yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why a lot of these people end up becoming solo artists, and I applaud that. Like a great example of a band or of a project that is sort of masked as a band, but the person behind it is not a dad and seems to be a really great guy, is Aesthetic Perfection. Daniel Graves is a wonderful person. Like, he has always been really kind to me, and he seems to be a funny, like, just all-around guy. And it's not a secret that Aesthetic Perfection is his brainchild, but as far as I can tell, he has never tried to keep that a secret either.
Mm.
It's not called Daniel Graves. It's called Aesthetic Perfection. I mean, it's massive, but it's a solo project, and that's fine. He's great at it.
Mm. Okay, fair enough.
What I'm talking about is when someone really wants to be the star, but for various reasons, they don't have the guts to be it, which means they have to actually put themselves out there. So they form this fake band, and then they act like a band tyrant until, everyone just tires and quits on them, or people start killing themselves. Like, I don't know, Euronymous in Mayhem.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. And I understand. I take your point and I take your meaning. And he's a good example. All right. Switching gears really quick. I don't want to keep you too long. We've started this a little bit late and there's some stuff that will be cut, but that's okay. We'll keep it to like 40-ish minutes or something like that. So I will go ahead and put the last question of real quick before I do last question. What is the future of Udad?
Good question. The future of Udad is that we're currently in the process of making a new EP. For those listeners that don't know, there used to be, Udad was basically formed as an offshoot, or like the remnants of this really old sort of weird post-teenage band that I had. And me and another guy from that band called Niklas Römer, we sort of broke off and started doing our own weird sort of electronic music just because we thought it was fun and we didn't really have a destination with it. And that turned into Udad. We're really into Carpenter, bands like Zombie, Goblin, stuff like that, and we wanted to like make something vaguely in that vibe, but with our own spin on it, and that became Udad. And then sort of because we needed a few guitar parts on a few things and we wanted like a real guitar player, we brought in another remnant of that old band that I had called Mongolian Cosmonaut, and that was called Alexander Graham. And then he sort of, just because of both familiarity and because he the greatest person for the job, became the third member, and now we're a trio. Me and Niklas, we did the first EP together, and just as a duo, with a little help from a few other people here and there. And we felt that, this is pretty nice. Nice as in like, our own little plaything. It was never meant to become this band or whatever. But now that Alex is a part of it and we're having so much fun together, we're writing a lot of like sort of, I don't know, new exciting songs that sounds different from what we've done before. And we feel this is something that we want to continue doing. We're gearing up to make another EP, or we're currently making it. I hope that it will be out somewhere between late summer, early autumn, because it looks like it might be out by then. Mm-hmm. And hopefully we'll start doing more shows by then, because we have a lot of tracks, and I know that there's a small but still very dedicated audience out there for it. And I have such a great time with those guys. So it's not necessarily for the audience sake; it's more like therapy for us.
Nice. Okay, good news. I like that project and what you've done with it so far. And I'm just eager for more music from you. You're a talented guy. Okay, I will go ahead. I don't, like I said, I don't want to keep you too long. We'll keep this one kind of nice and tight. What is something that you have been enjoying recently?
I've been listening to, I've actually given you this answer off and on during these interviews, but it's never been as true as I've been listening to a lot of black metal recently. I've the thing about with me and black metal is that it's been there in my life like 2011, and I had these little periods when I listened to like a few tracks for a little while, and I get in the vibe and everything, but now really started to deep dive into these sort of offspring bands that came out of the first real wave of black metal, and a lot of Norwegian bands that I missed out on. And if you're a true black metal fan, the fact that someone finds this on the other side of the third floor, I mean, it's insane. Like you wouldn't take that seriously. But I'm having a jolly good time with everything, and I don't mean just Mayhem and Dark Throne and Florence and stuff like that. I mean, all of the smaller acts that I sort of missed out on. I will recommend to your audience 3 really great documentaries that they can watch if they want to, especially if they're not into black metal, if they just want to hear the story. The first one is a British documentary, I believe it's British, from 2008 called Until the Light Takes Us. It's up on YouTube. It's great. Then there is another one from a few years later, I would say. It's called Once Upon a Time in Norway, and it gives it paints a really great picture of like the vibe in Mayhem and their relationship to Euronymous. I believe everyone who has had these fantasized sort of ideals about these dark figures in bands, the like, oh, that guy must be a genius, he came up with everything. They should really watch Once Upon a Time in Norway to get a comprehensive picture of how those guys usually are, like what type of characters those guys are. So Once Upon a Time in Norway, great documentary. And the last one might be hard to get a hold of with English subs, but it's called Helvete, named after the record store that Euronymous opened up in Oslo, and that was a collab between Norwegian and Swedish TV. It's great. It's a 4-part documentary called Helvete, and I would recommend the listeners to watch these 3 documentaries in the order that I just gave. Start with Until the Light Takes Us, move on to Once Upon a Time in Norway, and finish up with Helvete.
Okay, all right, noted. You sound like quite the authority on this. You've watched a lot of stuff on this, it seems.
I'm not, but I'm just I'm in it now, and I'm having a jolly good time. And if black metal is something that sort of piques your interest, then I would recommend anyone to get into it this way. I mean, especially if you're not a fan of the genre but wants to know more, because I think this paints a pretty comprehensive picture, and it sort of lays down the foundation of understanding a lot that happened in metal and in music in general after that. But because they changed a lot.
Gotcha. Okay. I always answer as well. So I don't really have anything to add. I'm not a black metal person. I'm a fake black metal fan. Because Behemoth isn't. I've been told it's not black metal. Okay, I don't care. Why? That's fine. So I don't, black metal is just not my thing. It's too much of a wall of sound. Like, I can get down on some things in small amounts, but overall it's just not my flavor, which is fine. We're all allowed to like different things. The thing I've been enjoying recently is putting my hands on the wheel of my life a lot more, and just having the courage and the audacity to sort of try and pursue my own path, and being less scared and being more willing to put myself out there and act as a host and be the center of attention in ways that I never would have felt comfortable doing previously. That's been pretty amazing. That's
a wonderful way to end this episode, Brian. It really hits home my mantra that I've been living by lately, which is do it scared.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you're not doing it scared, you're doing something wrong. So congratulations to you, Brian. I'm glad to hear that you're in a good place, because you deserve it, man.
Thank you. Likewise, I'm happy to see that success has found you, and that your releases as GingerCon, it is a good look on you, and it suits you. Your the authenticity of your character certainly comes through in the music and in the, also real quick, shout out to the art that you have been using. The Tentacles Sun is so fantastic. And I'm so in love with my shirt, by the way. It is so great. But yeah, man, you're killing it. And it sounds like both of us are in for a pretty good year, assuming the world doesn't end.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a little detail.
Yeah. Okay. That is it. I will wrap us up right here. I'm going to close this out. Thank you so much, as always, for coming on and having a chat.
Thank you, Brian, for having me.
Void Signal intro and outro courtesy of Processor. Visit processor2.bandcamp.com for more Processor, and visit voidsignal.net to help support the creation of more Void Signal. Stay safe, stay loud.